Hi, and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I'm doing a generic Court of Public Opinion because I got to put this out there. I've been listening and reading up on the story about Pizzagate, and for a while, what I found is there's a story behind a story about this story regarding Pizzagate that I think we need to address. Stories like Pizzagate are not, just because the story came out that Pizzagate occurred and has been occurring. And I think there's a overall view of this about some of the researchers and the comments that they're making. I'm not sure who these people are, but it would be, here's a priority that I think more people need to use their common sense is, and it's just my personal view and opinion. This is just an opinion, but it's a good opinion. And it's because there are people who have worked on cases like this or worked on missing persons cases. If you know just a little bit about my background, I worked with the Jessica Lunsford Foundation, so it's not like something unfamiliar to someone like myself or who've worked on, projects like this. And what I've come away with these independent researchers is a lot of them very valid, good investigative skills. What they're not taking in mind is that they're not the only ones that have looked into stories like this, and some of them, their behavior is problematic, and I don't know what to say. I mean, there's a professional way to handle, story in cases. They obviously have to be thoroughly investigated properly, and I'm not saying that there's nothing proper about but there's a way to go about it. And some of the comments I've been reading and listening to, I have to call it out because then it destroys the credibility of the case. It destroys a lot of the things when you have people that are just, there's a lot of arguments out there about Pizzagate researchers acting and behaving in a very ill will. And they have to keep in mind, this is about the victims and the other people involved in these cases. Number one, it's not about them. You know what I mean? You take the risk. You have to weigh out the risk, okay? And a lot of people, I've talked to other reporters, they have to weigh out the risk because there's a lot of credible information, and at the one point or another, people put themselves in unnecessary risk, especially when people start throwing around accusations. This is why there's a court process, because you can actually destroy the information in a credible way. You almost lose the case without even going in the courtroom. That's why I think it's appropriate that you be very careful with what you say and who you say it about, because you could actually destroy the credibility of the case, and credibility matters hugely. And what I find happening, and it has to be stated, that they have to think twice about what they say and who they slander. Now, this is why the internet is only good for a certain. It's good. It's a good research tool. It's very helpful. But the credibility of a victim, the credibility is very important in every case regarding abuse of any kind. Okay, it could be, let's go broader, domestic violence cases. Some cases are rape cases. Some, you go on and on. There's a length. When you go to the degree that they're talking about Pizzagate or Pedogate, involves a lot more, obviously. People who are willing to do that, there's a lot to be said. But instead of making this about, I gotcha, I'm going to catch you, gotcha, I hope people take a better professional approach, because this is why a lot of people don't get involved in these cases, because they consume people. And they, because it goes back to what's really credible, and it's important to maintain the integrity of the case. I had to state that because some of the comments I read, I'm like, I don't know where they're off base. And I can say this because in 1985, we dealt with cases like this way back then. And credibility is very key. A lot of times what ends up happening, and what a lot of people don't understand about these kind of cases, is that, it takes a long time to get to the judge, okay? And a lot of times there's a special procedure that's handled, and how a judge handles victims of a violent crime. And I know this firsthand. So I want to make sure that I state this because it bothers, number one, it's bothersome that these are the kind of comments that people make. And it's a stretch. Okay, so we go down to Washington, D.C., and I look to become a mediator, or I'm going to become a family court advocate. And that's what I do. Okay, that's how we go about this. We don't go and do vigilante work. Okay, it's just not the way you want to handle it. Again, it goes back to the integrity and the credibility of the courtroom. This is why a lot of times there's some degree, this is why some things are only handled in the courtroom setting, because it's controlled, it's safe, and it's meant for all parties involved. Because what if that information was bad information and somebody accused somebody and those accusations led to a crime? The idea is not to continue to let the crime continue, and that's why we would like to see more proper investigation. I think most people would agree there needs to be a little bit more of appropriate and proper, courtroom procedure before it actually destroys the case itself. And part of what's happening in the media is that you don't want these cases to be pulled into the media. This is the whole point. We want to pull away from that. And we want to make sure that we just completely start over with this. I know personally that it's actually hurting the case, not helping it. And I know anyone that knows this as an advocate, and I personally, because I have been a volunteer advocate for enough time to say this. A lot of times these cases won't go to trial because the victim doesn't want to pursue charges. Okay, so there's a standard procedure in operation. How these procedures are handled. I hope that people take in consideration this is not to deter them. This is not to destroy what they're trying to accomplish, but it has to be done in a careful, respectful way. I mean, if it's just going to be about a lot of finger pointing and blaming, this gives more credence to cases regarding the pedophile, and the pedophiles that are involved in these cases then become the victim. And that's the problem, is that this starts to turn into something else. And, in a proper context of how the law is conducted, how the justice system works, it's the only best justice system we have right now until those real internal changes happen. But there is a procedure, and that procedure, we have to go by that. I mean, really, I don't know how anybody could not go into the courtroom preparing for a case and handle it the way it's been handled. I just think that it gets back to the proper protocols and procedures, because courtroom procedures are far different than what goes on the internet. In the court of public opinion, we can actually discuss the importance to the integrity of the case, integrity of the courtroom procedure, because we want to make sure we prepare ourselves for these kind of cases. And the thing is, no one's really prepared. You cannot really prepare yourself, because a lot of things happen in the courtroom that might not happen in the public in the comfort of somebody's chair. A lot can be said. I just want to make sure we state that, because there's a lot of very good, smart, wise, intelligent, funny, charismatic people who really take to this issue and are doing incredible work, and they've been discredited unfairly. So I want to first thank David Seaman, who I find you very, very impressive, by the way, impressive. And same with the girl, really graceful. I find both of you, both out of all the people I've read and watched on video about these topics like this, or around topics like this, their child abuse forensic experts would applaud you both for the hard work that you're accomplishing. And they're not here, but I know they would personally thank you for what you're doing. Personally. And there's a lot of families who've had missing children who, in cases like, and I know we can speak for Jessica Lunsford Foundation, they would applaud your hard work. It's egregious that families have lost children under these circumstances. We went through it too in 1985. We could have easily endured what Mark Lunsford's family went through, and we were fortunate that we recovered the children in our family, and there was, for the most part, whatever harm was done, it was hopefully minimal, because today that case is still closed because of a minor's case under 18. Minor's information is not released to the public. And most of these court cases are not released to the public for reasons because of the safety and confidentiality agreements, okay? So I just want to remind you all, just keep in mind how important that is. I had to do this generic post because I got to speak to this. Again, I want to personally thank David Seaman. You are of the utmost professional, and the standards that you hold are high. I applaud you no matter how many times people have discredited you. I can speak for any child abuse forensic psychologist or therapist that has worked with me, or anybody that I've worked volunteer. They would applaud you for your impeccable and professional behavior. Thank you so much. Both you and Really Graceful. I applaud both of you. Thank you for listening to the Court of Public Opinion.